This podcast is also available via stagelink.com, the groundbreaking new platform for live performing arts. Please support the podcast by liking, subscribing, commenting, and tagging the podcast. It helps us to continue to bring the industry high level content. I'm your host, Shenea Stiletto, and today on the Circuspreneur Podcast, I'm joined by Janice Martin. Welcome to the podcast, Janice.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Well, we are so honored to have you, and you're currently on a cruise ship, so you are floating in the great beyond.
In the Great Caribbean, actually, to be exact. Not a
Oh, the
bad
great
place to be
Caribbean.
at Christmas time. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds nice. We love all the warm vibes. I have cruise shipped in the Caribbean myself a time or two, so it is fabulous. And Janice, we want to tell listeners a little bit about you, about your fabulous and multifaceted career. Janice Martin is a world-renowned, multi-talented performer, a virtuoso violinist, pianist, vocalist, and most uniquely, an aerial acrobatic violinist. She's captivated millions around the globe through her unforgettable appearances on NBC's America's Got Talent and CW's The Big Stage, where she stunned audiences by fusing breathtaking aerial artistry with world-class musicianship. A recipient of the prestigious Stradivari Society recognition and a three-time Female Entertainer of the Year, Janice has headlined stages from Carnegie Hall and Alice Tully Hall to Tokyo's Century Hall, Prague's Rudolfinum, and even performed at the White House for the President of the United States. Her productions, including the Janice Martin Cirque Show, Princess of the Violin, and World on a String, have taken her artistry across continents, blending the elegance of classical music with the excitement and freedom of aerial performance. Janice's collaborations with orchestras like the Philadelphia Orchestra, Boston Pops, and Cirque du Symphony have solidified her place as one of the most innovative and boundary-breaking artists of our time. She's also a U.S. Army veteran, an actress, a composer, and the author of the children's book, How I Learned to Fly, inspiring the next generation to embrace creativity, courage, and heart. And if you get a chance, listeners, please go to Janice's website and watch her music video, I like to say, with children while she reads them her children's book. It's darling and it's really precious. And you're reading excerpts to them, and they are just absolutely adorable. I was going to ask you, Janice, where did you shoot that little portion, that little promo for your children's book?
That was actually, I had a show in Branson, Missouri. And when I was in Branson, I was able to, we got a team together and gathered some kids and asked them to be in the video, and we did it.
They were so cute. They were
Weren't they?
absolutely adorable. Yeah, they were so cute. I was like, oh my gosh. And I love this. I love your book. I love your children's book. We were
Thanks.
speaking before you got on the podcast, Janice, about, the book is a very modern expression of how to run away with the circus. And you put in all the different themes of your really fascinating career and your life into your book. And so what compelled you, Janice, to write your children's book and yeah, put it in this specific type of form to appeal to children?
Well, actually, I was performing in Branson. I lived in New York and I was invited to go to Branson, Missouri. I thought I'd
Hmm.
spend a year there, and I ended up spending a lot more than that. And when I was there, this author came up to me after one of the shows and said, you should write your story. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, no, really, like you should share it. And so it's kind of stayed with me. And they came again and said the same thing. And so I thought, well, I don't think I could write an adult version, but maybe I could write a children's book. And so I thought, yeah, I think it is important to share our stories. And I get inspired by inspirational books and podcasts and so forth. So I thought, well, why don't I just share my story of how I sort of overcame my fear of heights, and which actually led to overcoming a lot of fears. And so I did. And I wrote it. In fact, I have a copy right here. So that's my book. And I had it actually. So I made little drawings
Hmm.
and took pictures. And then I found an illustrator. I never actually met her in person because she lived in Romania. But yeah, so that was through guru.com.
Oh, really? Oh, that's awesome. And I love the book. The cover is so sweet, and you're on your red aerial silk. For everybody that's listening in here and not watching us on the podcast, it's very sweet. And I love to know that those are like Yeah, your illustrations and your, again, you do like everything. Like, what is it that you don't do? And I think it sends a really great message to children in a very modern sense of how you can run away with the circus. And you have, the different parts of your life where you were in the military, and you were told to climb this really big thing, and it was really hard and very scary and very intimidating, and you were able to do that, and then that's what got you kind of interested in exploring like aerial arts work, which again, who would think that that is the thing? But I think we never know what is going to inspire us in our life to go to kind of point A to point B. And I love that, you went into the military because you went to Juilliard. That's another wonderful, facet of your story and then you were thinking about, how do I pay off all of my student loans? And the thought came to you, that there is a program in the military where they do pay your student loans. Again, very, creative and innovative, coming from that, and then harnessing that experience to go, into the military. And so what was that experience like for you, Janice, like transitioning from, Juilliard into the Army?
Oh, total culture shock. I mean, unbelievable. I mean, on one hand, so and the way that I found out about the whole program, by the way, is right
Mhm.
around the corner in New York, in Juilliard. They have a recruitment center for the Army, and I was stewing over, what am I going to do? I've got these student loans I've got to pay back, and I was on my final year in masters, and I knew so many people who just were burdened by these student loans and couldn't actually do work that they were capable of because they're just running around doing gigs just to pay off loans. And I just really wanted to have freedom from that. And I saw this sign that said Student Loan Repayment Program, inquire within. And then I looked up and it said the U.S Army Recruitment Center. And I just thought, there's no, that's funny. And then I walked about the block down and I thought, well, that's not being very open to the universe, Janice. So I went back and asked the guy, the recruitment officer, do you have any violins in the Army? And he was like, oh, I don't think so, but let me go check. So he comes back and he's like, not only do we have violins, but there's a job opening and they have an audition next week. So if you can get your, promo in there and they accept you, they'll fly you down to the audition. So they did. And I got the job. And then I was like, now what? It was October actually when this all happened. So I was going to finish up in June. So I I knew nobody who had been in the military. I mean, it was just completely left field. So I didn't know what to do. And I was studying with a wonderful teacher at the time, Dorothy DeLay. And she said, honey, I think it's a wonderful opportunity. You can come here and take lessons. And because I'd be stationed in Washington, D.C. And, you can certainly have a career not being in New York City. So I had from October until June to get ready. And at the time, I literally couldn't do any push-ups and I was incredibly weak. And so I had grown up like where my violin teacher told me, do not do push-ups. It's bad for a violinist. So I was very weak. And then because of tendonitis, I started getting much more interested in physical health. And I started taking dance classes. I took Alexander Technique and Feldenkrais. And I started to become much more interested and more educated about how my body actually worked. And so came very, very interested in strengthening. So from October until June, I sort of trained myself. And I was watching movies like Full Metal Jacket and Apocalypse Now and getting myself freaked out about these drill instructors. So in the morning, I'd have somebody in my head saying, Martin, get that going. And so I really trained hard. And I ended up getting to being, when I got there, I was the fastest runner in the company. And I almost could do the most push-ups and sit-ups. So after being at Juilliard in a place where, I don't know, you spend so many hours a day in a practice room looking at the four walls. And here I was out and they had adventures for us every day. We had to throw live hand grenades and went to a gas chamber. And we did bivouac, which is basically camping for soldiers where I kind of got into it because it was so different from what my life was like. And I remembered like a week before I went off to basic training, I saw this Time magazine that was talking about these, really rich people who would spend lots of money to be dropped off in the middle of the forest and they'd have to fend their way out. And I was like, I'm getting paid to go on this kind of survival wilderness retreat. So, I
That's a
did
way to
have
look at it.
and honestly, I kind of had a good sense of humor about it until
Hmm.
I reached this confidence course, and where I really truly was paralyzed by a fear of heights. And so that I had, when you don't think you can do something, it just seems completely impossible. And then when somehow you manage to do it, that really, really changed my life. And so that's how where that book came from. And that's also where the drive to just, well, if I can do this, what else can I do? And and I came to aerial acrobatics pretty late in life. I had been studying martial arts at the Shaolin Temple in New York City, which was very,
Naturally.
I mean, it's well, it's actually more acrobatic than it is arts. Like, I mean, we're doing lots of cartwheels and things.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I loved it. I just loved that environment so much. I loved the discipline,
Hmm.
and I loved our sifu. And um, but I went to a Cirque du Soleil show. I think it was O, not I think it was O. I was in the steam room. I took myself to Las Vegas because I had a gig and I was just gonna enjoy the time. And this woman in the steam room said, "Hey, I have a free ticket for O. Would you like to have it? Because I can't go." And I was like, "Sure." So that was my introduction, honestly, to aerial arts, and I just had this emotional reaction to it. I just like felt tears coming down my cheeks, and I just thought, I have to do this before I'm too old. So I went back to New York and enrolled in a class, and I just said, look, I highly doubt anyone's going to hire me as an aerialist, even if I work very hard. But if I involve the violin, maybe I can do something. So my lessons were with the understanding of, let's figure out what we can do playing violin. And
Hmm.
I just have been on a quest ever since to try to incorporate and make it an organic thing. And so the music is inspiring the movement, and the movement inspires the music. And that's a lot easier said than done. So, it's probably a lifelong journey, but I love it. So
It looks like you love
that's what
it,
I
and
do.
it's really amazing. I mean, it looks so hard. I think that's like the first word that anybody will say, hard, a little bit scary, in there. And as someone who really wanted to play the violin when they were younger, but got stuck with the flute, and again, I love the flute to this day. I wanted to play the violin so bad. Like
Really?
I would have maybe have been you, Janice, had things gone my way. But it didn't, and that's okay. But I played the flute, and I was doing ballet, and I was doing gymnastics. And I've always had this, this idea. I always tell this story because it was a really big deal in my life. When I was little, and I've always been an enthusiast about the violinist. No, I have never taken classes or lessons. I'm not like
Hmm.
you, where you saw things out, you saw it, and you're like, let's pair this. But I've always been very musically minded in that way, and I've always thought
Oh,
of like the what if, because I didn't love the flute, so then I didn't stay with it. And for me, if I don't love something, like if I love it, I mean, I'm going to spend my entire life dedicated to it. I think you're like that too. But if it's just not in there, if it's not a part of like my innate being, I'm not going to stay with it, even if I could have excelled. Maybe I could have been good. I don't know. But that's all to say, how have you paired the love of the violin and the complexities and the intricacies of being such a highly regarded violinist? I mean, you went to Juilliard, and then also to fusing them within aerial arts performance. What have been the challenges within doing that? And then, I think also too, what is the perspective of other musicians? You're a concert pianist. You do these really, wonderful symphonies. You do these grand. I mean, you can do a little bit of everything, but it's not like you're even doing a little bit of everything, because you can tell even without knowing that you're so highly skilled. And so, what is feedback, that you get in these spaces, and being an anomaly? I'd love to see more artists in different spaces intersect with the circus arts. And it's getting, I think, more and more popular to do that. More singers,
hmm.
more artists, and more musicians are, not just like maybe sitting on the hoop, but again, learning the full skill to be able to do an entire act, within this art form. And I think that's probably, yeah, what is most fascinating about your journey to me, of, what has been the challenges within that, and the overall, I think, feedback from, coming from that environment and then sequencing into something else like this.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there.
I
So
love
first
long
of all,
questions.
so how people regard it. Some
Yeah.
people think it's great, and some people don't. My audiences tend to get really excited about my multi talents, and
Hmm.
agents. It's been a harder sell because they, especially when I lived in New York, I felt like there's sort of a box that they want you to fit in, and if you don't fit in that box, they don't really know what to do with you. And
Hmm.
I've had some very open-minded people in my life who have opened doors for me, but I definitely had to work for that, and definitely got, I mean, I've had, I remember I was promoting my work, and at this orchestra league, and it actually got a laugh. They were talking about this aerial violinist, and so it was hard to not be a little humiliated by that. But on the other hand, and honestly, when I first went on America's Got Talent, I think they thought I was going to be like a freak show, so they put me
Mm.
on. I went on at 8 in the morning. I had to do my rigging check, and I did not do my audition until 10 o'clock at night. The whole
I
day I
I know
sat
the
there.
feeling.
And the
Same.
people who were on right when I was
Oof.
there, they were like, there was a guy who was a toe dancer, which means he put a little tuft of, just to be like hair on his toe and some eyeballs, and he wiggled it in this box. And another, I mean, like, they just had ridiculous acts around mine. And so they were like, don't bother, like, so, and when they gave us their advice, it was like, your presence, your everything is so important. That interview before your act is just as important as your act, and blah blah blah. So I get on stage, and they're like, oh, don't bother with the interview, just climb and tell us your name as you're climbing. And I was like, oh god.
Oh
So
my
I get
God.
there, and I'm as fabulous as I can, and the audition went, like, my act went really well, and it got a standing
Yeah.
ovation. So they're like,
Yeah.
okay, we need you to come back and do the interview. And then it ended up being like this really long ordeal. Then I had to sing alone, then I had to sing and accompany myself with the violin, and it went a long time. And but the thing is, like, people kind of have to see and experience what I do to appreciate it, because when I talk
Hmm.
about it, it's very difficult for people to understand it, and they just think it's weird, or they don't understand it. And I guess so. And back to the question of how it is that I ended up doing all these different things, and why I sort of clung to that is, well, I started off as a pianist. I was 4 when I started piano, and 5 when I started violin. And
Hmm.
in my family, I have 2 older sisters, and so we all played together, and we'd play at church together. And then it just became kind of a competition with my sisters, like, well, I'm going to learn, this instrument. And then I played trumpet in high school, probably to just prove that I was a tomboy or something. I was a cheerleader, and then I played trumpet in the halftime. It was really stupid. But at any rate, I went to a tiny school, so I also had lots of opportunities. And
Hmm.
I started just acquiring this mentality of, like, and part of it was because my parents were like this. It was like, it wasn't a question of how to do it. You just do it. Now go practice piano. Now go do this and go to that, and you just do it. And it's kind of like in school, you do math, and then you do science, and then you do sociology, or whatever your courses are. And that's kind of how I grew up thinking. And so when I'd have a violin teacher who was like, you really need to focus on just one. You're really sabotaging your life because you're not focusing on one thing. It's possible I have sabotaged my life, and that I could be super famous if I wasn't. But I I was inspired by Leonardo da Vinci, quite frankly. Like, well, here's an
Hmm.
example of somebody we really admire because he did all these different things, and
Hmm.
also because his knowledge from one field informed another field. So I can bring my musicality that I learned from singing into playing piano and into violin. And yes, they have different techniques, but I mean, I sort of have acquired the mentality that everything is a technique. You just have to learn what it is. Sometimes it's a mental technique. Sometimes it's a muscle technique. Sometimes it's a food technique. It's it all comes down to the systems that we learn, right? And you can
Right.
always perfect that and polish it. So I just thought, we have pop singers who sing and dance and play an instrument, and we admire that. So why am I limiting myself so much? Because at this moment, I'm in the classical field. I was going to be just a classical soloist, and then I felt so limited by that, and I missed
Hmm.
playing piano. And then when I went off to college, I was going to practice 10 hours a day because I wanted to be a famous violinist, and I got tendonitis. I couldn't play anything, so
Oh.
I started opera, and I was at a great opera school. So I figured I might as well. And I was going to be an opera singer, and I didn't identify as an opera singer. I probably am more like that now, but at the time I was very much like nerdy violinist. Like
It's not
I
me.
no, because all the opera singers that I'd go to see at parties, they were like, "Oh, hello, oh," and they'd boast about how fabulous they were, and I just I didn't see myself like that. So I wanted to
Your
get myself
pedigree.
back. I wanted to get myself back to health, and so I just decided, instead of limiting myself, like, life is short, and
Hmm.
what am I trying to be like another violinist for? Because we have
Yeah.
enough of those. And in the
Yeah.
classical music world, there's such a pressure to be just like everybody else. Maybe
Hmm.
even the circus world has the same thing. And I think it's because the
Hmm.
discipline is so difficult. Daily practice,
Hmm.
doing things that are, drudgery, and sometimes the improvement is minuscule or incremental, and just the dedication you have to have. Sometimes we just get locked into a mentality, and we stop seeing, you know, what else can be done with it, and we limit ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you didn't limit yourself. I'm glad that you were like, no way. I want to do whatever I want to do. Like, no one's gonna like limit me or put me in a box. I think I think it's incredible. You start out in these art forms where it's all about expanding the capacity of who you are, and then people then start trying to put you back into something else. Like they try to put you back in that box. But we're in the arts, we're in the creative spaces where you're supposed to explore. You're supposed to evolve
Right.
and look into those different like facets of yourself, and then slowly, everyone's like, yeah, but guess what? Be creative, but only be creative like that person. It's like,
Right.
that doesn't make
You
any
nailed
sense.
it. You nailed it.
Like, how would
Well,
you
I
have
mean,
become you? Yeah,
and you're the same way. I mean, you've created this podcast, and you've created a whole, culture around, bringing awareness to what is going on with not only the art, but the people doing the art too, and the
yeah.
vulnerabilities, and all of that. I mean, like, you're doing huge things. You're that affect people's lives in big ways.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Janice. And I'm really honored. I wanted this podcast to be a space where we honor artists. We honor the work that you're doing right now because it's not easy to be creative and be a rebel and to put yourself out there. And sometimes, even within your own community and your own industry, it can be hard to break through. And, if people can't define who you are, you're busy, doing that yourself. You're doing keynotes. We were discussing, before the podcast that you're going to be giving another talk soon. And, I think it's so valuable in performers speaking and discussing their work. Sometimes people don't hear a lot of who we are as a person, as a human being, and the dynamics that go into who you are as just like a personality and in being human and being vulnerable in that way. I think it's really relevant and important. And we're kind of rounding out, I think, like the last probably like 5 or 6 minutes or so, Janice. And so I'd love to discuss a bit about your presence as a keynote speaker and, what motivated you to speak on your experiences because you play so fluidly. I mean, the way that you express yourself, you do so much work. You do your one woman shows, and you're kind of like a jack of all trades, and you wear all of these different hats. But keynote is also too a whole nother animal. It's challenging. I've given quite a few myself, and am continuing to learn in that space. But what was also important for you to communicate, your journey and your art form and express it in that way, because not everybody wants to venture into that space. But yeah, I love that you, you don't hold yourself or keep yourself from exploring anything that you want to do. And I think that's a very powerful lesson for everybody who feels like people are are trying to say that they're only supposed to do things, no matter what it is, in one particular way.
Well, I think it is important to share our stories. And from just and this is a new venture for me, so I haven't done a lot of keynote speeches. But just the
You're on
ones
your
that I've
way.
done, I've always been very surprised that,
Mhm.
because I kind of feel like I'm rehashing knowledge that everyone is saying. And it's really surprising to me how many people will come up and say, "Oh, I learned so much," or they're taking notes. And I'm like, "You're taking you're taking notes on my speech, okay?"
I love how you're
But like,
surprised, by the way, that you're surprised that people are taking notes on what you have to
right,
say.
right.
You have so much
But
experience.
this is the thing, because when you're inside your head and you're creating, you
Yeah,
just forget what you know is not what
yeah,
everybody else knows. And
right. It's not universal
it's
sometimes. Yeah.
and the thing for me that I love about doing these is that it does allow me to connect to people in a way that I don't normally, because there's just this kind of wall, like, you talk to people afterwards, "Oh, we liked your show," and but there's not a lot of communication. And I think also, especially with circus arts and music that's not singing, you are so in what you're doing that it's not really, it's about the art. It's not really a connection. I mean, if
Hmm.
people connect, you want people to connect to your art. But if you're spending your time connected to people on stage, then you're not doing your thing. And
Hmm.
so, I mean, when you're speaking, you're still speaking about a topic, but like it is really gratifying to talk to people afterwards who come up and they have questions, or and I mean, motivational speakers have just really touched my life. It's probably one of the reasons I have had the courage to do things outside of the regular traditional spheres. And to just have somebody saying, go for it, is it's remarkable how lone of a voice that can be. If you're surrounding yourself with people all the time, they kind of want they want to expect the same things out of you. And I think motivational speaking is really important, actually. So I do find it really gratifying. I wouldn't want to just do that, but in coupled with what I do, it's kind of an outlet, and it also reminds me of stuff that I need to be remembering, like discipline, things like that.
Yeah, it's a great reminder. I know. I like how you said that because sometimes we have to, self-soothe and self-priest ourselves. Giving your like your internal sermon to remind yourself of what you're doing. I love how you talked about being present and being in the moment, also too, and we're also used to doing that. I think in our art form and trying to carry that into the rest of our life, and then inspiring others, to figure out where they can get, I think, that holy center from, right? I think that's what is established when you're doing art on the level that you're doing it to, and taking it to such a different level. But I want to thank you so much again, Janice, for being on the Circuspreneur podcast and for sharing, your wonderful story, your very multifaceted story. I think you just have like so many different, parts of your personality and things that you've been willing and brave to take. I just again cannot imagine from going through all of these things that you've gone through and living through that. But to close out the podcast, what are some inspiring words that you would like to leave listeners with, especially going into this new year, into 2026, as a performer yourself that continues to, I think, just recreate herself, and evolve in the ways that you have. But for performers that maybe also too don't know where they fit in and are trying to, I think, carve out a niche for themselves like you have, and the painstaking work that it takes to be able to do that on top of staying relevant and staying prepared and doing all of the groundwork that you need to do to stay so excellent. What would you leave listeners with, and forward thinking for who they could be with their art, if they're interested in that, or just as people in their lives?
Well, I really believe in the discipline of your mentality of focus on the love of your craft and your relationship with that, and focus on, the effort that you're giving to it. People will like it, some people won't like it. You'll make some auditions, you won't make some auditions. There's nothing you can really do about that. and you can't keep trying to change yourself into what you think other people want you to be. I mean, I know auditions, yes, there's some criteria that you've got to match, but I mean, I really do believe that put the due diligence in and trust that it will come to fruition, and don't be freaked out if not everybody loves it right away. I mean, I think trying to reinvent yourself simply so you can please different people, it does come back to bite you in the end. I think you have to just stay diligent and keep believing in what you're doing, and if you don't like it, then change, but don't be intimidated by whether others like it or not.
Yes, beautiful words. And this is coming again, listeners, from a aerial violinist. So the next time you think people might not understand what you do and who you are, remember there is someone playing a violin and doing aerial at the same time. So
Yes.
if Janice can communicate that, you can figure out a way to communicate who you are and what you want to do to others. Nothing is indefinable. So you can't put a price on that value either. It's I think a very precious talent to possess. What you have, Janice, and then also to inspiring others with that talent to go seek that out, because I think you're a vision of excellence in
Thank
everything that
you.
you do. Absolutely. And listeners, please, go online and look at Janice's videos. They're just gorgeous. There's one where she is literally rotating while playing the piano in the air. You'll definitely get a kick out of that. And looking forward to seeing more of that, Janice. And thank you so much again. This
Thank
Circuspreneur
you
podcast.
so much.
Absolutely. This Circuspreneur podcast is also available on stagelink.com, stagelync.com, stagelink.com, the groundbreaking new platform for live performing arts that provides unmatched access and connection to this vibrant world of shows and entertainment. If you're a professional in the performing arts, visit stagelink.com/pro, stagelync.pro. StageLink Pro offers industry professionals higher visibility, networking opportunities, and tools to support and enhance their careers. Until next time, everyone, I'm your host, Shenea Stiletto. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Circuspreneur Podcast.